Kuwaiti media reported that Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, was secretly loaded onto a Russian military aircraft and flown to Moscow. Not for a diplomatic meeting, for emergency surgery, on a leg that may or may not still be attached to his body, at a facility inside one of Vladimir Putin's personal presidential residences. Iran's foreign minister denied everything. He said Mojtaba is in complete health and safety and is fully managing the situation. But he couldn't show him. Nobody can. And that is the most important question in this war right now. Not just whether Mojtaba Khamenei is alive, but what it means for Iran, for the Strait of Hormuz, and for a conflict that is already reshaping the global economy, if the man supposedly leading one side of it is lying in a Moscow operating theater, or worse. To answer that question, you first need to understand who Mojtaba Khamenei actually is, because most of the world still doesn't. That changes today. To understand Mojtaba Khamenei, you have to understand one thing first. He was never supposed to be visible. While his father ruled Iran for 37 years from the front stage, Mojtaba operated entirely in the shadows. No public speeches, no Friday sermons, no press appearances. U.S. diplomatic cables published by WikiLeaks described him as Iran's principal gatekeeper, the power behind the robes. He was born in 1969 in Mashhad, Iran's holiest city, as his father was rising through the revolutionary movement that would eventually topple the Shah. When the Islamic Republic was established in 1979, the family moved to Tehran, and the elder Khamenei climbed from deputy defense minister to president to supreme leader. Mojtaba followed a different path. He attended the elite Alavi High School, then joined the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, serving in combat operations during the final years of the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. That war shaped him. The men he fought alongside went on to become the commanders of Iran's most powerful military institution. Those relationships never broke. After the war, he studied theology in Coma, but he never reached the rank of Ayatollah. He is a Hojjatul Islam, a mid-ranking cleric. That's a problem for the Islamic Republic, which requires its supreme leader to carry religious authority. His father wasn't an Ayatollah either when he was appointed in 1989. The law was amended to accommodate him. A similar compromise has already been made for the son. By the mid-2000s, Mojtaba had quietly become one of the most influential figures in Iranian politics, not through any official role, but through control of access to his father's office. In 2005, reformist candidates accused him of engineering the rise of hardline President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, coordinating with IRGC commanders and senior clerics to deliver the election outcome his father wanted. In 2009, he was accused of doing it again. When millions of Iranians took to the streets in the Green Movement protests, chanting against the stolen election, one of their chants was directed at him specifically. "Wish you death, Mojtaba, so you would never be the next leader." That wish did not come true. Here is something the mainstream coverage has largely glossed over. Mojtaba Khamenei did not win a clean democratic vote from the Assembly of Experts. According to Iran International, the outlet that first broke the story of his succession, the IRGC moved to install him within hours of his father's assassination on February 28th. Before the Assembly of Experts had even formally convened, IRGC commanders were making phone calls and in-person visits to assembly members, applying what Iran International described as psychological and political pressure to vote for Mojtaba. The assembly building in Coma was bombed during the process. Meetings had to be held online. 8 assembly members announced they would boycott the vote entirely. Senior Iranian clerics questioned whether the process was legitimate at all. And yet, on March 8th, the assembly announced a unanimous vote in his favor. Unanimous, after a process that began with coercion. What that tells us is critical. Mojtaba Khamenei is not just the son of the old supreme leader. He is the IRGC's supreme leader. He was put in place by Iran's most powerful military institution, which now, more than ever, controls the Islamic Republic. Trump called him a lightweight and said he should have a say in appointing Iran's leader. Tehran rejected that immediately, and in doing so, Iran sent a message: "We are not collapsing. We are not fracturing. We are doubling down." Now here is the part that should concern everyone watching this war. Mojtaba Khamenei is not a continuation of his father's policies. He is an escalation of them. The Atlantic Council, one of the most respected geopolitical think tanks in the world, described him as aligned with the most ideologically extremist clerics in Iran's establishment. That's not media hyperbole. That is an analytical assessment. On the nuclear question specifically, his position is more alarming than his father's. Ali Khamenei maintained a fatwa, a religious ruling, against the development of nuclear weapons. It was a policy position that gave Iran diplomatic cover for years. Mojtaba is assessed by analysts as more open to abandoning that fatwa. He has ties to hardline clerics who believe a nuclear deterrent is not just acceptable, it is necessary. Think about what that means in the context of this war. Iran is already enriching uranium to 90%, weapons grade. The IAEA confirmed in late 2024 that Iran had stockpiled enough highly enriched uranium for multiple bombs on short notice. Indirect talks mediated by Oman in early 2026 yielded no breakthrough. And now the man in charge has fewer ideological restraints on the nuclear question than the man who came before. His first public statement as supreme leader made no mention of negotiations, no off-ramp, no conditions for a ceasefire. Instead, he declared that the Strait of Hormuz would remain closed. He called for all U.S. bases in the region to be shut down or attacked. He said revenge for those killed, including his own wife, mother, and sister, all killed in the same strike that killed his father, is a file that will remain open. That is not the language of a man preparing to negotiate. That is the language of a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. But here is what most people watching this war do not know about Mojtaba Khamenei. While publicly living as a religious figure inside Iran, he was allegedly running a financial empire outside of it. In 2019, the United States sanctioned Mojtaba Khamenei directly, stating he had been representing the supreme leader in an official capacity while operating outside any formal government role. What the sanctions didn't capture was the full picture. Investigative reporting has revealed that networks tied to the supreme leader's office funneled billions of dollars in Iranian oil revenue through international financial channels, and used it to purchase more than £100 million worth of luxury property in London and Dubai. London, Dubai, the two cities most associated with Western finance and Gulf money. Iran's ideological gatekeeper, the man who championed the Islamic Revolution his entire life, was quietly parking wealth in the very capitals of the system he claimed to oppose. This matters for two reasons. First, it tells us who Mojtaba Khamenei really is behind the ideology, a pragmatist when it comes to his own interests. Second, it gives Western governments leverage they have barely begun to use. Those assets can be frozen. Those properties can be seized. That pressure has not yet been applied at full force. Now let's come back to where we started, because the Moscow story changes everything. According to multiple reports from Kuwaiti, Israeli, and Russian sources, here is what we currently know. Mojtaba Khamenei was injured during Operation Epic Fury on February 28th, the same strike that killed his father. The severity of his injuries has been the subject of wildly conflicting claims. Iranian officials say a broken leg and facial lacerations. Sources inside Iran, speaking to exiled dissidents, describe something far worse. Both legs amputated, abdominal rupture, a coma. What is not disputed, he has not appeared publicly. Not once. And now, according to the Kuwaiti newspaper Al Jarida, confirmed by multiple regional outlets, he was loaded onto a Russian military aircraft and flown to Moscow, where Putin personally offered to have him treated at one of his presidential residences by a team of Russian doctors working alongside Iran's own Minister of Health. Here is what makes that detail extraordinary. Iran's supreme leader, the head of an Islamic revolutionary state that has defined itself in opposition to foreign dependence for 47 years, is reportedly recovering in a Russian presidential palace. Not in Tehran, not in Coma, in Moscow. An Iranian source close to reformists told reporters there are serious doubts that Mojtaba even issued his first public statement himself. The suspicion is that it was written by Ali Larijani, Secretary General of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. The source said Mojtaba was not even informed about the planned broadcast. And critically, Iranian military commanders have reportedly received no direct orders from him since his appointment. Not one. So here is the real situation, stripped of all the noise. Iran is at war. Its supreme leader is missing, possibly in Moscow, possibly incapacitated, possibly dead. Its military is being run by a committee of IRGC commanders with no single accountable figure at the top. And the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flows, remains closed. The U.S. placed a $10 million bounty on Mojtaba Khamenei's head on March 13th, which means Washington is either hunting a man who is already incapacitated or a man they believe is still operational enough to matter. Either way, the next 72 hours will tell us more than the last 16 days. Watch for one thing above everything else. If Iran produces a verified video of Mojtaba Khamenei, with audio, with a date-stamped reference to a current event, the situation stabilizes around his leadership. If that video does not come, then Iran is being run by unelected IRGC commanders with no public face, no accountability, and no survival instinct to restrain them. That is the scenario that ends wars the wrong way. If this gave you a clearer picture than what you're getting elsewhere, subscribe, because this story is moving fast, and we are not done covering it.